As the sun dipped below the horizon at Monument Valley, a solitary horse rider came into view. She moved with deliberate caution, as if avoiding detection. I sat on my cabin porch, sipping whiskey while the desert transformed to shades of gold and orange. Upon spotting her, I should mention, I'm James Whitmore, 47 years of age. For 8 years, I've resided in this cabin by myself after quitting the cavalry. I moved westward to escape memories, a Kansas woman unaccustomed to frontier living, and a profession that forced me into actions I still regret. No matter the distance I traveled, my history always found me. This cabin lies on the boundary of a fragmented region in the high desert where Arizona and Utah intersect. Living here solo is risky, but that's intentional peril keeps me alert, and solitude keeps me true to myself. The woman rode straight to the cabin. As she drew near, I discerned that she had Apache appearance. Her outfit was traditional, a long gown, adorned with turquoise and silver, wrapped in a blanket woven with red, blue, and yellow hues. She had long black hair with silver streaks at the temples, braided in the Apache style. Approximately 35, she was visibly wounded. Her left arm dangled at an unnatural angle, and she leaned heavily to her right. While dismounting, she almost collapsed, steadying herself on the horse's neck. She spoke in English, saying, "Don't shoot." Her tone held no fear, only pragmatism. "I'll cause no trouble." I rose and replied, "I have no intention of shooting you." All my instincts urged me to retreat indoors, bolt the door, and pretend she wasn't there. The Apache and U.S. cavalry had been locked in conflict for decades. By any meaningful measure, this woman was my foe, yet she was unmistakably injured. "I require shelter for one night," she stated. "Come morning, I'll depart and you'll never see me again," I inquired. "Where is your tribe?" She answered succinctly, "Gone." When soldiers arrived, we dispersed. I got separated and have been traveling on horseback for 2 days. I ought to have sent her away, but I refrained. Her name was Naida, daughter of a revered Apache leader, though she rarely discussed her kin. She suffered a gunshot wound to the shoulder and 3 fractured ribs. Someone had attempted to murder her. She never named the attacker, but her tone implied it wasn't soldiers. I escorted her indoors and treated her wounds. I had previously served as a cavalry surgeon, but eventually I couldn't stomach the sight of blood. Although I tried to abandon that past, the medical expertise stayed with me. "This is going to be painful," I warned while attending to her shoulder. "I'm aware," she responded. She never screamed or voiced a grievance. She simply bore the pain with the resilience born of a life lived on survival's brink. I inquired, "How did this occur?" After a pause, she said, "My husband aimed to lead our tribe toward peace in the reservation. I supported him, yet not everyone concurred. Some view surrender as equivalent to death. They came for him. When I attempted to intervene, they shot me," she stated matter-of-factly. "Your husband is dead, killed 3 weeks ago by those who opposed his vision." I completed bandaging her shoulder. She remained silent for an extended period. At last she said, "My name is Nita, daughter of Mangus Coloradus, widow of Thomas Whiteear." I replied, "James Whitmore, ex-cavalry, now hermit." A faint smile touched her lips. I offered her the bed my own, without mentioning it was mine. I settled into the chair near the fire, and we both remained in the dark. We were adversaries from opposing sides of a conflict, torn apart by excessive history and agony. "Why did you assist me?" she questioned. Around midnight, I pondered her query. Truthfully, I wasn't certain. For 8 years, I had avoided involvement in others' affairs. Yet here I was, spending the night caring for an Apache woman's injuries. "Because you required aid," I eventually replied, "and I'm weary of being the sort of person who ignores those in need." She paused. "You are not what I anticipated," she said. "A white man alone on this patchy land, I foresaw cruelty or apprehension. I did not foresee compassion. Maybe it's simply exhaustion," I admitted. Exhausted by conflict, exhausted by having to pick a side, exhausted by the false notion that your skin color decides if you're deserving of rescue. Come morning, Nida hadn't left. She'd promised she would go, but at daybreak, she couldn't get on her horse. The injury was still raw, her ribs severely fractured. Any movement would lead to increased bleeding. I urged her to remain for another day. Until she felt better, And if you enjoyed this Western tale of a cowboy and an Apache woman, hit subscribe so you won't miss upcoming stories. We craft compelling Old West narratives that defy stereotypes and honor love without limits. What nation are you tuning in from? Share in the comments. I'm curious to learn if you're watching from Brazil, Portugal, Spain, the US, or another location globally. Tap follow to keep up with all future content. Note: this story takes place in the Arizona Territory during the 1870s, 1880s, a time of fierce clashes between Apache and American settlers, yet also a period where brief harmony and bonds could exist. This tale explores the possibility of two individuals from opposing sides of conflict picking affection instead of animosity. What's your opinion? Was James correct in aiding Nita? Which persona resonated with you deeply? She gazed at me as if deciphering my motives. She questioned, "You realize how this appears? A Caucasian man cohabiting with an Apache woman? If the military discovers this, they'll pursue you." I replied, "Allow them to come. I've been evading situations for far too long." She remained one more day, then another, then a week, then 14 days, and throughout that period I discovered all about her. I found out that her name translates to hope in Apache. I learned she was wed to Thomas Whitetear for 15 years. They had 2 kids, both of whom died in a cavalry attack half a decade earlier. I discovered that her spouse devoted his last years to negotiating harmony between Apache and Americans, seeking a method for coexistence. He thought we could create something jointly rather than perpetual warfare. One evening, she shared this while we sat on the veranda observing the sunset. Her shoulder had recovered sufficiently to allow arm movement. Her ribs remained sore, yet she had gained strength. And he believed that if we ceased hostilities, we could exchange goods, divide the land, and establish something beneficial for both groups. I remarked that he was a decent man, and she concurred that he indeed was. However, society is not prepared for individuals like him. It merely accommodates fighters and military men. Also men who think strength comes solely from annihilating opponents. At that point, I recounted my history, my time in the cavalry, the sights I witnessed and actions I took. I spoke of the lady in Kansas who deemed frontier existence extremely perilous. She preferred a partner with wealth, security, and an urban residence. I shared details of the advancement I was offered, which would have forced me to command attacks on Apache groups. I described the instant I resolved I couldn't continue, preferring solitude. Involved in a conflict I lacked faith in, we are 2 individuals in identical circumstances. Nita remarked that we're fleeing wars we didn't initiate, seeking tranquility in a world that rejects it. Perhaps that's the reason we discovered one another. I said she gazed at me with a look I couldn't fully interpret. She stated she ought to depart because my safety would be compromised if she remained. I replied that security isn't my concern. My concern is you. The statement astonished me as I spoke it. Yet it was accurate. During those 14 days, I cared for her injuries, provided meals, and conversed with her deep into the night. I became utterly enamored with her. She called my name, James, with a tone of sorrow. "You're aware this is unfeasible. Your community will never embrace an Apache spouse, and my community will never pardon me for caring for a Caucasian man. We represent impossibility. Perhaps impossibility is our sole remaining option." I suggested that maybe impossibility is the unique space where individuals like you and I can unite. At that moment she rose, and I believed she would exit, but instead she approached me. Then she kissed me as if it were the most significant act she'd ever performed. 3 months following Naida's arrival at my doorstep, a traveling priest conducted our wedding ceremony. It was neither a conventional Apache nor a typical American rite. It was a blend. This union was forged by 2 individuals who deemed custom irrelevant. Love held equal weight, and news traveled swiftly across the territory. A Caucasian man and an Apache woman cohabiting and formally wed. Southern ranchers and settlers considered it disgraceful. Northern Apache tribes viewed it as treason. The cavalry found it problematic. Naida was now legally under American protection due to her marriage to a U.S. citizen, yet rumors persisted about potential consequences if tensions rose anew. We were indifferent, or rather we had a detached concern, but we declined to allow it to alter our creation. I instructed her in American farming and livestock management, and she educated me on Apache methods of subsistence from the earth. Jointly, we formed something that was entirely neither American nor Apache. It was uniquely ours. We constructed a bigger house, cultivated fields, bred horses, and established a location that, against all chances, was serene. Additional individuals began arriving. Some were Apache who had been separated from their bands and sought alternative lifestyles. Others were settlers disappointed by ongoing strife. There were also those simply exhausted, weary of combat, weary of animosity, weary of the unending loop of aggression. In a span of 2 years, we formed a tiny settlement near the cabin, roughly 30 individuals, Apache and American, coexisting, exchanging knowledge, and constructing an unlikely reality. Officials were uncertain how to handle us since we were not violating laws. Nida was lawfully wed to an American, and we caused no harm. Our mere existence defied conventional wisdom about feasibility. Eventually, a cavalry officer approached the cabin on horseback. He appeared youthful, around 25, and seemed anxious. Dismounting, he said, "Mr. Whitmore, I've been instructed to give you a communication from the territorial governor." My stomach nodded. I had anticipated difficulties for months, yet the message surprised me. The governor proposed I serve as official mediator between Apache tribes and American settlements. He was prepared to acknowledge our community as a legitimate settlement and desired us to serve as an example of successful coexistence. I inquired of the young officer why he would offer that. He responded, "Simply because it functions. What you've achieved here stands as the sole example of success discovered. The governor believes that if it's feasible here, it can be replicated elsewhere." That evening, I presented the letter to Nida. "It's a trick," she replied at once. "Once we accept official recognition and join the American system, they'll slowly modify the conditions. They'll force us out or assimilate us until we blend in with everyone else." "Maybe," I responded, "or perhaps this is the opportunity we've been anticipating, a real chance to make a difference. Not for us, we already possess everything we require, but for others like us who are exhausted by conflict and desire a change." She pondered this for an extended period. "If we proceed," she finally declared, "we set the rules. We won't allow them to dictate what peace is. We make no concessions on how individuals are treated. If they attempt to alter the arrangement, we leave." "Understood?" "Understood," I replied. By 1890, the settlement expanded. We had nearly 200 inhabitants in what was now called Whitmore Wells. We established a school instructed by both Apache and American educators. A marketplace existed where Apache handiwork was traded next to American products. Families with mixed-race children didn't have to pick between their mother's heritage and their father's. Nida and I had 2 kids of our own. A daughter, Sarah, who possessed her mother's attractiveness and her father's determination, and a son, David, who was the finest mediator you've ever encountered, capable of moving between 2 cultures as if he fit into both. Not everyone was in favor. The Apache traditionalists still saw Nida as a betrayer. Some American settlers still viewed me as a fool. But the governor was content, which ensured security from the worst hostilities happening elsewhere in the region. One evening, we sat on the veranda of our enlarged cottage. It had transformed from a hermit's refuge into the heart of a flourishing community. Nida held my hand and inquired, "Do you recall that first night when I claimed I only needed to stay for 1 night?" "I recall," I responded. "I deceived you," she admitted. "I had been wandering for 3 days before I stumbled upon your cabin. I might have continued riding, but a part of me knew I needed to halt. That if I kept fleeing, I would never discover what I was seeking." "So, what were you searching for?" I inquired. "Peace," she replied, "and someone to share it with." I kissed her then, just as I had that evening months earlier, when she made the choice to remain. People frequently ask me how I knew to assist a stranger, how I knew she was worth the danger, how I knew that love between adversaries could exist. The reality is I knew none of it. I simply followed my gut, a sensation that something significant was unfolding. But reflecting on the subsequent 15 years, on the community that evolved from that first evening, on the children born into a world where tranquility was achievable, I understood something. Life's greatest discoveries aren't achieved through certainty. They come when you're prepared to risk everything for another person. Maida transformed my life by showing up on my doorstep, injured and desperate, but more importantly, she altered what I thought was achievable. She demonstrated that enemies could become lovers. That conflict could cease if individuals were willing to make different choices, that the world is flexible if you're bold enough to reshape it. The cabin still stands, older now, weathered by time, wind, and the Arizona sun, yet it's no longer isolated. It's filled with laughter, voices in two languages, and kids playing in the yard. And each evening, Naida and I sit on the porch, watching the sunset over Monument Valley, and I'm thankful for that night. When she said she needed to stay for just one night, because that one night transformed everything. Hi everyone, I sincerely want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching this story all the way through. Understanding that folks from all over the globe, from Brazil, Portugal, Spain, the United States, or any other nation are here watching my tales. Having faith in characters that I brought to life, that's the most wonderful thing that can happen to a creator. Stories are meant to be told, and you did that with me if you enjoyed this narrative. Leave a like, it truly helps the algorithm. Subscribe, you won't regret it. Turn on notifications so you never miss anything. Share with someone and spread the affection. Next week, there's a new tale I'm crafting, something epic, and I truly want you to witness it. Thank you from my heart.